Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream of Shadowverse. Today is Monday, September 20th. Thank goodness. Wow. I was about to take a double take there, thinking it was the 30th. I misread the date. So, yeah. Over the weekend, I probably should have scheduled some things, didn't. But I did manage to get a couple of episodes recorded of The Binding of Isaac Rebirth. We can hopefully in the next couple of days completely wrap up that series. I also spent what I can only hope is going to be a reasonable amount of time programming some Windows batch scripts, which is just a nightmare. And honestly, now that I think about it, I probably should have, for as much as I was having to teach myself Windows batch programming, I probably was just leaning heavily on the old way of doing things, and it would have been potentially smarter to learn Windows PowerShell and make a PowerShell script instead, because Windows batch programming is absolute garbage. It is nowhere close to the level of capability or just ease of use, really. There's just a massive amount of frustration using Windows batch programming compared to using a ZSH or ASH or bash BASH script, which all in .sh and are, for the most part, usually intercompatible. But yeah, batch scripts are awful. There's just, it's barely even programming, and it's a nightmare. And I can only pray, I suppose, that by spending 2 days programming these scripting environments, I'm going to, in the long run, save myself the equivalent, if not more, time automating processes. What this more generally was about was programming a command line program called media info to get the appropriate information from movie and music files and create a playlist based on that appropriate information, which there really isn't that much you can put in a .m3u file. Anyways, it is the runtime in seconds, which media info tells you the runtime in seconds, but then adds milliseconds as the last 3 digits. Not so much so that you can't get around that, though. You easily just do an integer divide by 1,000, and that gets rid of the milliseconds and gets you the right number. On top of that, that is one of the few things that Windows batch scripting was capable of doing. But then after you have the time in seconds, it's just a comma, then it's supposed to be the album. Since this originally was focused on music, then there's supposed to be a space dash space, and then the song title. And there's a little bit of different ways in which you get that information using media info based on whether it's music or video, and based on whether or not it's a actual movie or a TV series. But all of those ID3 metadata tags do have that information. This effectively eliminates the need for using MP3 tag to manually create playlists, and automatically does it for me. It kind of does it in a weird way, since you're searching for files and then dumping those files to the playlist. So you're just adding a line to the playlist every time you find a new file. What you have to do then is go back and search for all of the playlists and make sure that there was at least one file in it, and delete the ones that don't have at least one file. So I've programmed it basically to look for MP3 FLACs, M4 Vs, and MKVs, which is a nice system, a two-phase system, where MP3s are the smaller space using slightly lower quality, compressed, lossy audio, where FLAC is the uncompressed lossless audio. Actually, FLAC is compressed, but I think it's always compressed. But FLAC is lossless in its compression, so it takes a little bit more space. And then it is just up to you in using something like Handbrake and encoding videos to determine whether you can make a M4V, which is just an MP4 file, but I recommend using M4V and M4A extensions because that makes it easier to directly identify whether something's audio or video in MP4 formats. And then MKV is the new hotness, certainly, as far as standards for video, and they're going to give you the biggest files. So yeah, I spent 2 days making this playlist creation batch script, and also got a little bit done in the same process. So yeah, hopefully that saves me some time and automates things. I'm trying to get as much of my workflow here as far as using Tiny Media Manager, which has the ability to add some right-click options in the post-processing section. So I'm trying to set it up so it will directly call a couple batch scripts. One to make the folders have thumbnails, which is a tricky little thing I figured out how to do, and so I'm having to slightly work around my code just to make sure it works with Tiny Media Manager. But I'm still in a workflow here, and I see EU is on the chat saying hi. Hi EU, I don't want to ignore you. Yeah, I'm still got like 3 different programs I'm using, and so I'm getting rid of even one does potentially make it more efficient. But yeah, just to organize and learn how to use Kodi, the media program. I'm using still MP4 audio and video tag editor, which puts in different metadata versus Tiny Media Manager, which is a much more automated process. And then I'm still using Handbrake to encode things to try and save some video and save some space.
Snack on, friend.
Let's see.
Snack on, friend.
Guess you can't evolve, so we'll just attack here.
Today was a right good day.
It's just in the turn here. But yeah, still using Handbrake, Tiny Media Manager, 2 batch files, one making the Windows folders have icons, one making cascading playlists. So there's a playlist in the top tier folder that has all the files in all the subfolders, and possibly any files in that specific folder. I don't see that scenario being useful. And yeah, it's still putting a lot of effort into just getting metadata right for no reason. What this is almost certainly a fool's errand, in that I'm just trying to get some files to be really, really nice, and so that I can have it last me potentially the rest of my life and never have to touch it or deal with it again. If I could get my servers working and just put more effort into it, there is also an argument towards setting up a proper Plex server and get away from DLNA streaming. I don't know if there may be reasons not to go with Plex servers still, but yeah. I theoretically, if I got my servers working, would have enough room for quite a lot of more of just backing up like all my DVDs and all my Blu-rays, but it'd be a lot of work, and honestly, I don't think even now, even having a massive home lab server with lots of space, if it was working, I don't think it gives enough space that you can just flippantly go for that project. And frankly, I don't know if I have the energy or time to do it with it. One of the things that Linus Text Tips was doing as he was being handed 90 terabytes of SSD hard drives for his home, because he's a popular YouTuber and he's just flexing effectively as far as technology goes. But one of the things he said that I think is kind of true is the fun thing about having the opportunity to have a massive amount of space is to then be able to go and find what you can do with it. Certainly if you buy a new house, there is a certain fun in finding the things you can fix, at least early on, if you are so far inclined fixing or updating. A lot of that definitely depends on the approach. If you buy a house and then all of a sudden there's a whole bunch of things you have to fix, that's different than wanting to take on a project and enjoy that project. Same is true with IT.
To the afterlife with my blessing.
Let's see.
My life as a prayer.
I guess we'll end that turn. So yeah, do I have anything else to say? No. I do foresee a future fairly quickly where I will be just done with all the video I got. It is not something I intend to make just a consistent part of my life. I'm simply trying to set myself up and then be done with it. And the irony is, certainly a lot of these videos and music may have very little use. I may never go back and watch them. There is only a few movies that I check out with any frequency. And that is true for certainly my DVDs and Blu-rays. And it's nice, certainly, to have DVDs and Blu-rays where they're just plastic, and there's a decent chance that because they've been sitting on the shelf, that while they may be covered in a little bit of dust, they are still perfectly fine, and they haven't deteriorated and turned to oil or something like that. But eventually that will happen. All the plastic DVDs will just dissolve. But it is so nice to have that ability to just have something be written once and cheaply made versus hard drives, which need electricity and need backups on backups. And 50 gigabytes on the Blu-ray is still a lot of space. I'm still a little shocked that they haven't made micro SD or SD cards that are just write once devices. Like, it can't be that out of the realm of possibility that would be doable. Because I could imagine all you would need to do is have like really cheap micro SD flash RAM that burns itself into its permanent position on that first right. Or maybe just has a very minimal number of life cycle rights to it anyways. Interesting. This card does something in your hand. Let's see. Okay. Wow. So we can just play that card over and over again.
I have been waiting for you.
At the end of your turn, as this card is in your hand, gain X to the following effects. X equals the number of valid amulets that came into play this turn. Okay, so it only gives you things if you can get a amulet on the field. Interesting. I'm to wrap up the accountability section. I like I said, I did get a couple episodes of The Binding of Isaac. I'm not feeling as tired as I was. In fact, I'm even thinking about trying to work on an irrigation system later after today's stream, or giving up on it maybe too. Just like part of it was to make a box that would weatherproof the faucets, and I'm dangerously getting too close to winter again. So I may have to give up on it until next summer, next spring, whatever, past winter. But yeah, I'm very surprised that I was able to... I should have played that earlier if I was going to do that. Yep. I was very surprised. Sorry, I'm losing track of my thoughts here. I was very surprised that I actually beat Mom's Heart on hard with Blue Baby. In fact, it didn't even take me but an hour and 40 minutes when usually it takes me closer to 2 hours to get that accomplishment. So that was a relatively short episode. Which really does highlight now that I think I calculated that I've probably done about 95% of everything there is to do as far as unlocking secrets and achievements on Binding of Isaac Rebirth. And even more so than at earlier points in the game, success really just depends on getting that one lucky run. I'm still struggling, even on normal, to get into a boss rush fight, let alone win a boss rush fight. So that is yet another thing that will probably just get left on the cutting room floor as far as just don't bother doing it. I know if I get the boss rush fights done with each character, that unlocks an item, but I'm not sure if you have to do that on hard mode or if you can do that on normal mode. And I'm still not trying to unlock the Lost, and I'm still not trying to get completion marks that are just generically for
By the power vested in me. You've walked into the wrong forest,
okay.
Friend.
Meowskers. Okay. Do this and do this. How many abilities does this have? 3. And then
You're done
evolve
for.
here.
I am feared and respected. Pounce.
But how though?
Yeah, and so I guess I don't really have anything else to talk about. I'm still playing Destiny Child like crazy. They're having 2 events at the same time, so
And your mortal lives are
spending a lot of time there. I got close to abandoning the spin-off game that's not really made by Shift Up that just uses Destiny Child's characters called Destiny Child Defense War.
Me whiskers.
There's
No! Stop!
there's a there was a point there where I stopped playing for a few days, but I'm now back to it. And they've added a whole new system to Destiny Child Defense Wars because they know they've run out of contents and grindy contents they can add. It's still really just a tower defense game though. And so I think you'd almost need another year of adding content to it before it even start to feel like it could be something different, if you even have any hope of it ever feeling like something different, which that is, I think, a big if.
Take the souls of millions and consume me!
And that's about as much as we can do. So EU says, today's random question, what's the hardest and easiest games to make commentary on? Without spending a lot of effort to go and look at every single game I've ever covered, I can say, generally speaking, if there is a lot, I mean, this is going to be stupidly obvious, but if there's a lot to say about a game, it's really easy to put commentary on it. If there's not a lot to say about a game and its gameplay mechanics, there's really not a lot to say. I feel like the Pinball Arcade series definitely gave me a lot of variety, since every single pinball table had a different theme, so you could talk about that. Every single table had a different pinball table layout, so you could talk about that. There were different shots. The overlapping concepts of pinball still were there, but that was about it. Whereas some games kind of are grindy and kind of are the same thing over and over again. FTL was like the second game I ever covered on my channel, and there's some variety certainly there, but not particularly as much as you might want for as long as a single run of FTL has. It's hard in retrospect in 2021 to say play FTL faster than light. Generally speaking, I think if I rage quitted on a game, there's a definite connection there as far as how hard it is to comment on something. I think I spotlighted a game called Shower with Your Dad Simulator. I don't know if that actually made it to my YouTube channel or not. And that was just a collection of joke mini games around that one theme, so there wasn't a lot of gameplay variety there to talk about. So that might have been one that was kind of hard to make commentary on. Generally speaking, if I'm going to cover a game, I'm going to have something to say, or just generally anyways. I can form an opinion and have something to say anyways. Those first couple of series where I started to basically just ramble while playing Binding of Isaac, that particularly after the 80th and 90th episode, there was kind of nothing more to say, and that's why generally I want games to end, and I want to be able to end a game when I'm either right about to run out of things to say, or I just recently ran out of things to say. Some of the games, like Batman Arkham City, most recently, do kind of have that problem where there isn't a lot going on. Yeah, Batman Arkham City tells you a very generic Batman story, and for, I would say, at least 60% of the game, they really just want you running around collecting Riddler trophies. Some of the Assassin's Creed games I've covered certainly also kind of run into that problem, where there's a distinct split between this is the grindy time where you are making
Let us pray.
where you're just collecting feathers, and versus less grindy times when you're actually seeing a cutscene and going against actual enemies. Like, it's almost not connected at all whether the game is good or not, as far as how easy it is to comment on things. And honestly, a lot of, I think, my commentary suffers more these days from me just being old and tired versus the thought of the game being specifically good or bad. There definitely are times in games where my attention span has been divided, so there's just a lot of me going and like I am right now, and I'm going quiet a lot. Binding of Isaac Rebirth, definitely in the later episodes that I'm recording right now, are spending a lot of time. They're taking up a lot of my mental attention, so I can't talk and play the game at the same time. I really shouldn't have that problem with Shadowverse, though, and I sometimes feel like I'm having that problem. But yeah, I can't think of the name. Like, Telltale games basically have no gameplay mechanics in them at all, really. It is just a visual novel for half of it, and then it's tricks that pretend like you have real game-changing influence when you're not doing the visual novel conversation elements in a Telltale game. But in that case, the Walking Dead Telltale series had really good story, or at least good enough story for video game standards, so it's kind of impossible to say that that was a game that was hard to put commentary. That was a game that was actually very easy to put commentary on, because I was specifically only focusing on what was being said and done. So yeah. So yeah, I know there was definitely one game where I was just like, yeah, this is just the same thing. Just more shooting, more grinding. Torchwood, Diablo type games where you're just asked to grind a lot. I've never even begun to think about covering something like World of Warcraft. I specifically avoid games as services such as MMOs that would definitely have a lot of grinding on it. Skyrim, I suppose in the last few sections, the last few episodes of Skyrim, there was definitely some points in Skyrim where, you know, you end up just being the stealth archer character, even if you try really hard to not be the stealth archer character, and then you go into your forge, and then you're just grinding up the forge you're taking all the iron you found and you're turning it into iron ingots, and you're leveling up, and it's just like loop on loop on loop, but it's just wasting a lot of time. I know that was really grindy, and that there were points there where I was not really making a lot of commentary. Yeah, EU continues, when there is a game that's hard to comment on, what do you do? What I usually do is play off screen. I'll say I just am going to play this off screen because this is grindy. Playing as the blue baby in Binding of Isaac Rebirth, there's been several times where I've gone off screen and just said I'm going to play this off screen, and then I'll come back in the next episode and either have success or talk about why I'm still failing even at that point. Let's see, can we evolve something here? I guess not, we don't have an evolve thing anyways. But yeah, if I don't have anything to say, generally I'll just go quiet, and it's a fairly natural experience, because there usually is something when you're playing more of a story-based video game where you can just go quiet, and that's oftentimes where I kind of hate myself as a critic, because I'm not really doing my job as a critic at that point. I'm just presenting a few minutes, maybe. Usually I try to go no longer than a few minutes in which a cutscenes. Sometimes I'll just go just very generic indications that I'm listening. But yeah, I generally go quiet, and if I know I'm gonna go for several hours grinding, I'll go off screen. I try not to go off screen because any time I spend playing video games is directly taking time away from making footage if I'm playing off screen. So that's not something that I generally want to see happen. Okay. Do this. Interesting. Interesting. These guys can't attack, but I can't shoot past them. Interesting. So do I want to kill something?
This'll be a breeze.
Pounce.
I did my bestest.
I think that probably is what I want to do.
Power vested in me.
Yeah, I don't know what you really would want to do. There is definitely a fantasy in my head of running a YouTube channel and the videos more like a TV station, where if somebody gets choked up or they need to take a breath or something, they just hand over to the next presenter. And yeah, the idea of having another content creator just saying, hey, why don't you talk about this game, or why don't you put some fresh eyes on it, why don't you give your opinion on it, on what you're seeing, even though you may not be the one actually playing the game. Those ideas all are something to think about. And at a certain point, I think that is where the podcast general category for video gamers comes from, is that you have a bunch of usually mainstream video game journalists that are spending they claim they're spending 60 hours, and I can believe it, a week plus, playing video games, and then they don't really make any footage off of that other than maybe an hour long, maybe 2 hour long quick look at the beginning. And even when Giant Bomb is making a quick look, they usually have somebody new to put a second eyes on it. But the vast majority of the time, the reviewers at sites like Giant Bomb, to use that as an example, are playing games mostly silently in their own homes. Some of them sometimes stream, but even when they're streaming, they're often just like the awful Twitch streamers who are playing music in the background and just barely paying attention, often not saying anything as far as commentary. If anything, not to toot my own horn, I might be the most creative critic I've ever seen, in the fact that I actually am trying to make criticism and commentary non-stop on the videos. And yeah, there are definitely people out there that will make a 4-hour stream and say, I like this game, and think that that one sentence at the end of a 4-hour stream is enough commentary to constitute what fair use should be. And whereas I want to make video game criticism and commentary much closer to a DVD commentary, director's commentary, where they are talking throughout the entire course of the movie. Although there are definitely some director's commentaries I've also heard where they just go quiet. I don't know if there's anything else you really could do. Yeah. There's some of the visual novels, like the 999 visual novels, were so linear in their stories that it was kind of hard to make commentary on them other than to say that I think this is what's going to happen. And once you've said that once, that you're just kind of repeating yourself after that point. So yeah, there needed to be, particularly in Virtue's Last Reward, the second 999 visual novel game, there needed to be a bit more red herrings and potential twists. And I will say, I think even Virtue's Last Reward presented potential options way faster than the first 999 game, which was fairly obvious as far as what was happening until you hit about the halfway point in the story, and then all of a sudden there was this case of one of the characters you're with turns out to be a murderer, and there's very little hints as to why that person specifically, which it was often different people for different paths, turns out to be the murderer or the bad guy. And since that visual novel was just so much about the dialogue, that's all you can really talk about. There's nothing else that can be said. You can briefly talk about the visuals. To wrap up this long-winded answer, which long-winded is exactly what I'm going for when trying to give commentary. I think one of the things that I succeed at fairly well is the curation of what I'm going to cover. There is a heavy amount of effort that every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday we go through. We look at every single game. We look at it visually to see if there is something there that attracts my attention. That curation process, which admittedly eliminates probably 95% of all games that I could potentially purchase and play. It has severely helped me not run into a lot of duds as far as games go. So I really don't have a huge number of games I think I've even played or would ever play. Yeah, I'm looking now at like the list. There was one called Beyond Eyes that was kind of a disappointment. So there wasn't a lot to say about that. Some of the puzzles are single screen puzzle games. It's not a lot to say. Danganronpa, when I was playing the mini game resource management game after it, that was fairly grindy, so there wasn't a lot to say there. But I think mostly, even if I did not feel like I had a lot to say, I usually had more than enough to say compared to most other people. And I would almost certainly, it would play such a major factor as far as whether or not I'd continue playing a game if I just was not making any commentary on it. A lot of my commentary is incredibly repetitive too, so I can just say similar things about one game as I said with the previous game if those same things are true. The Ghostbusters, the video game, for instance, that might have been a game where I didn't comment that much just because I was enjoying the experience. And I'm sure there probably are a few like that. Her Story is probably a game where I didn't comment as much as normal because that's a game where the game is showing videos. Let's see if there's anything else that I want to even mention. Some of the Lego games certainly get really grindy, and so when you're in that late stage of a Lego game, it's real easy to say nothing and just go quiet and just play the game. The later Lego games also had the characters make more speech and sounds, and so there was less need to actually say anything while the characters themselves were talking. Poker Night at the Inventory is another example of that, where honestly, since that was just a Texas Hold'em poker game and the characters in Poker Night at the Inventory were giving these long-winded monologues, there was probably very little I said while playing that game. There isn't really a lot to say about Texas Hold'em. It's either programmed right or it isn't. The Talos Principle is an example of a game that presents a lot of deep-minded, like, religious type thinking, and so there definitely was a lot to comment on while playing that, even though the Talos Principle itself was just a simplistic 3D puzzle laser game. The dialogue and the setting and the theme of the game really worked out well, whereas The Witness, I probably struggled a little bit more playing The Witness because while there were some sections that would play audio tapes, the audio tapes kind of felt just trite and stupid, like it were just randomly picked audio tapes to put in the game, and I think that's exactly what was the case. And there wasn't a connecting real story or theme to The Witness, not of anything of interest. Even if you unlock the final cutscene, it's still a fairly weak story they're trying to tell. And The Witness also had a couple videos that you have to watch in real time, and that was just an insane waste of time. Yeah, I guess I don't have anything else that really is worth mentioning. EU says, mega random stupid dumb question. Why do you put emojis in the title of the videos and how do you choose it? So there's a plugin that you can get for free, or that you can get a professional license for. I've never made enough money on my YouTube channel to get the professional license on it, called TubeBuddy. I think it is probably the extension, Chrome extension, that almost everybody who on YouTube uses. Yeah, I don't know of any other extension whatsoever that even slightly helps you set up, schedule, and just generally decorate and make your phone, make your YouTube experience better as far as uploading videos and scheduling them. And in TubeBuddy, one of the many things it offers, although a significant amount of things that it offers actually are hidden behind the Pro license, is the ability to pick a YouTube. Let's see if I can find something here that won't expose something secret. You get the ability to pick a video. Let me just see here. Yeah. So yeah, here's a page on where you schedule your title and description, and see you have this TubeBuddy extension that modifies it on Chrome, and when you come over here, there's this little pull down tab, and it pops up a collection of emojis. Honestly, I think there could be more emojis that would be supported by YouTube. So since there's been many versions of Unicode that they've come out fairly quickly with new emojis. And so what I do is I think of something that is thematically relevant in this limited spectrum. Like there's, as far as video games, I think a more Atari joystick controller, and yeah, there's a joystick here, and then there's like a gamepad controller, and then there's a mouse. Where's the gamepad one? I don't even see it. Maybe there isn't a gamepad one. But yeah, there's not a lot, frankly, that relate to the same themes that happen over and over again as far as emojis. So I just try not to be incredibly crazy. They do have a lot of these symbols for religious reasons, or the zodiac signs. And then there's lesser known symbols that would be more internationally. Here you have like the wakaba, I think is what it's called in Japanese, which is the beginner's tag that new drivers have to put on the back of their cars as a sticker. And then there's lesser useful emojis that you can pick, and then there's flags from different countries, which, yeah, I almost never use the flags because they're just not detailed enough. So I just pick something often, and often it's kind of the same things over and over again. Here's the gamepad. It's labeled as video game. And often what I'll pick is a gag, a joke, some element to the game that is overly emphasized, perhaps, in my opinion. And so, yeah, I just pick something, and it is perhaps a secret insight into my own mind, as it were. But yeah, why do I use emojis in the title of the video? Because it differentiates me. It's not just in the title of the video. If you click down the 2 or 3 clicks it now takes to get into the description of a video, you'll also find that there is a whole table of contents line at the top that has an emoji related to each section in the description. And if you click show more to see the whole description, I believe at that point you can see that the description itself goes on fairly long and answers some fairly generic questions as far as here's what the description on Steam is for this game. Here's the direct link to Steam. I've stopped linking to any other sites other than Steam since other websites go down too often. And then there are also social media sites where you can follow me. There's also a link to my Patreon and a link to friend me on Steam way at the bottom. There's a description of generically what my hardware was when I played that game. Sometimes that's updated incorrectly, so it may not be 100% accurate, but it's usually close enough. And each of those sections in the description also have an emoji as kind of a visual breakup of the different sections. And I just think it makes all the text look fancier. It differentiates because most people don't use emojis in their description. And I don't know if that's ever actually hurt any video as far as being recommended or anything. If anything, it might help. But yeah, I'm just trying to make the video look as good as possible. Maybe that gets into the realm of stupidly over polishing something. Arguably, I think a lot of people might say you can polish a piece of poop as much as you want, but it's still going to be a piece of poop, and so maybe the content of my videos still suffers kind of badly. But it was something that was easy to do. It doesn't take but maybe a few seconds to add emojis. So, yeah. I've been doing it for a few years. I don't see really a reason. I've never had anybody violently comment or come back to me and say, I hate these emojis. Generally, even if I put a downright spoiler in the title as an emoji, people won't recognize it. Dead Space 3, for instance, when that airs on my channel, I have a moon emoji, I believe, on that. Does that mean anything to anybody who hasn't beaten Dead Space 3? No. Does it mean something to people who have beaten Dead Space 3? Yes. So it's often a joke there. There really are probably is only about a dozen of them that have any relevancy, though. And only so often can you put a gun in front of a video because it's a first-person shooter. There could definitely be a more complicated system if I had a little bit more choices as far as emojis, and that's why in part they've added more and more emojis. I could make like a category where everything with a gun is a first-person shooter, and everything with like a brain is a zombie game, things like that. But a lot of those things would overlap, and there is also a high possibility that I'll be airing 2 or 3 first-person shooters at the same time. So then the series don't they don't differentiate each other enough, and they look like they're all the same episodes from the same series. it is a slight indication of just how, if it was easy to make custom thumbnails, I would make custom thumbnails for all my videos. It's just not easy. Although, now that I think about it, there might be a way. There might be a new era if I could make a overlay image like I was talking about in the previous stream on my own computer, and then I could use Image Magic, which is a command line imaging software. I might be able to take a random thumbnail from the videos, somewhere around the middle of the video or something, and then put that overlay image. It would take a lot of time, a lot of work though, and I'd be making something completely from scratch. So that is definitely a project for another day, to potentially make like an automated probably PowerShell script that would run Image Magic on Windows to extract a random screenshot from a video, because I really wouldn't have any deep learning ability to detect faces or anything like YouTube does. But yeah, that could be something to do in the future. But before I even started that project, I would need to actually succeed at some point in automating the uploading process of videos on YouTube, because that's the thing that kills me already anyways. And so if I literally could just drag a video to a folder and it would just automatically be uploaded and scheduled, and everything just procedurally knew how to get everything right, that would be really great. And yeah, I definitely will say I'm open to suggestions as far as descriptions and the way I decorate videos. Obviously, I don't need more feedback to say you need custom thumbnails. I know that. Everybody says that. But as far as YouTubers and content creators, nobody goes past the idea of the very basic things about you. That so often I have tried to watch videos from people who claim to be successful on YouTube, and they say, yeah, custom thumbnails, and I'm like, yeah, I agree that. What else do you got? And they're like, nothing. Just do custom thumbnails and get really lucky. Make a second channel and have one channel dedicated to one series and another channel dedicated to another, which that just doesn't work for me. That's too much work. Like, I may at some point spin off a second channel. One of the earliest podcasts that I listened to, I'll just name it since it has nothing to do with video games, Anime World Order, they have been fervently against the idea of kind of modernizing. They make about one podcast a month at most. And often it's maybe 3 or 4 months in between, and I'd say maybe you're getting 7 or 8 episodes a year. But even they have started to go to YouTube, and yeah, there is definitely a lot of people who spend all their time on YouTube or TikTok or Reddit, and it's like I'm fairly disappointed in general in the fact that a lot of people are not going to a lot of varieties of websites, whereas in the older days there was a little bit more variation there. Like, we've seen a Walmartification in a very literal sense of Amazon.com being a place you go to buy books, but then you would go to places like Newegg or TigerDirect.com to get computer components, and you'd go maybe to GameStop or somewhere else to get video games. Now it's just all go to Amazon.com. And yeah, there's
An opportunity for growth.
less willingness to go to different places. And that's not even getting into the fact that there is just a whole other internet-like thing in the Tor project and .onion sites that I doubt less than 10% of people even know exist, let alone actually go to websites like that. People really jumped on the bandwagon with the internet for the convenience. They didn't jump on it for an age of exploration or intrigue or learning anything new. So once they found something that was convenient enough that they were willing to learn it, they stuck with that. I wanted to talk about Steam's update, I guess, a little bit, and then we need to cover the news. There's a new downloads page, which they're showing a picture here, and it doesn't look particularly too different. And a storage management page, which I'm not sure that storage management existed before. I assume a lot of this is part of a long-term goal to just improve Steam for the Steam deck, and just in general. We also are still, I guess, waiting for the top releases of August. Yeah, I imagine there's some optimization here that they're looking first and foremost at the Steam Deck and trying to make their sites a little bit more focused on that, instead of being, I mean, you can even see this here, that this is, if this was zoomed in right, this would be an incredibly long scroll down a more PC-centric web page style interface, whereas on the Steam Deck, you're going to try and want to keep everything on one screen and only scroll down if you absolutely have to.
I loved her. She was everything to me.
And I still have a theory, an unprovable theory at this point, but I have a theory that in the next 6 months to a year, Steam will one day magically not be in blue. I think the blue art style is on its way out. I think they're slowly changing their icons to not be blue. I also wouldn't be surprised, and I've heard some rumors, and these are just rumors, that one of the more annoying upper management roadblock employees at Steam might be close to retiring, and I don't know if that's Gabe Newell or someone else. Honestly, I have a hard time believing Gabe Newell actually blocks anybody from doing anything. I just think he's kind of the absentee spokesman more than anything. From what I hear, he mostly just plays Counter-Strike Global Offensive. But yeah, if somebody big name, it almost certainly would have to be Gabe Newell, leaves the company. Like, I could see Steam changing away from the blue fairly quickly after they left the company, or in honor of him leaving the company and retiring. Gabe Newell definitely looks like somebody who could easily retire and should retire. And honestly, he doesn't even have to be fully retired. He could just be mostly retired, and then they could trout him out whenever he's going to make a presentation. He doesn't have to pretend like he is the person in charge. I think that level of advertisement is kind of pointless, since anybody in the know knows that Gabe Newell really isn't acting in charge and hasn't been Probably for a very long time, if ever.
Miracles and magic are two sides of the same coin.
Alright, let's start going through the video game news.
Water in the desert is more precious than gold.
Just going down my Twitter since I've been talking for what? Why is my timer crashed? 3 hours and 24 minutes. Really? How in the world have I been playing for 3 hours and 24 minutes? Says we've only been live for an hour. Oh, I bet I know what's happened here. Oops, this is gonna suck. Have been programming. I bet I programmed and started a recording. I bet I programmed and I started a whole bunch of recordings. Because every time I hit the like open parentheses, open bracket button, that's the shortcut.
An opportunity for growth.
Well, open curly bracket, because you have to hit shift 2. Alright, so I'm gonna have to edit this video in a crazy way, and I'm gonna have to go back and look at all the other videos too. Ooh, I sure hope that doesn't mean that I accidentally played a whole episode. I bet it didn't. I bet I'm fine. But yeah. That's crazy. Hopefully everything comes out alright. Okay, let's go through the video game news then. GameDeveloper.com, let's see, says reflections on the tutorial design in Puzzledorf. Has a blog here if you're interested in looking at that. Let's see. Bandai Namco has trademarked Wafu Encore and 1 and 2 Encore in Japan. MiHoYo trademarks Honkai Star Rail. I don't know what Wafu Encore is. It sounds like waifu. Is that maybe how you pronounce waifu? So I guess these are remasters of old games. But Wafu is a catchphrase from the Konoha series titular protagonist. Yeah, so this looks like more of a kid's game than a waifu game.
I pray that you will be freed from suffering.
Let's see. Unity is looking for a head of solutions engineering, APAC. I don't know what APAC is, in Singapore. Advanced programming and coding would be my guess. See, they're looking for a consistent record in delivering real-time 3D products from concept to submission, using C# or C++, which obviously are the languages to learn if you're going to program. Arguably, if you can only learn one, I'd say learn C++, but there really isn't a reason why you can't learn both. There's definitely a question, and yeah, I'm noticing as far as other engineering positions, there's a long list here as far as careers.unity.com is concerned. I kind of want to see with the STEAM concept a whole new generation of kids who are programming just way better, and they have a much better understanding of programming than anybody alive today. It's not just natural talent. I would hope that just more experience and more education and better practices would help lead to better code and faster coding. But there honestly may be a tapping out function there too, where you can only get so good in programming, and until the CPUs get better, or the version of C# or C++ gets better, there's only so much you can do. But as someone who is classically trained as a programmer, it would be a lot nicer if there were people in my life that I could show code to, and that they would have a clue as to what I'm talking about or how I'm going about it. I wouldn't even really mind if they were critical and looked at my code and said, actually, this kind of sucks and you need to work on it harder. A little tough love to encourage me to work harder wouldn't be terrible. Which, in all honesty, this is kind of a it's lonely at the top complaint. But it is lonely at the top. Like, being the only person in your life that knows how to program really at all, and also just by defact makes you the only person you know that's actually good at programming, so you're by default the best programmer you know. And in fact, over the course of my life, even having gone through programming classes, I only met maybe half a dozen people who even showed any interest in being programming or learning programming. A lot of programming classes I took, particularly in high school, would just give you a passing grade even if you didn't learn a single thing and just didn't cause trouble. And so most people got out of those classes without even trying. So yeah, there's half a dozen of people I met that were actually interested in programming, and somebody I might consider a peer in the field of programming. And that's just not enough. I would totally like to see a new generation where everybody has taken at least a little bit of programming. Everybody understands it a little bit. Everybody can look at code. Everybody can give their 2 cents or have an idea. I'm not sure if video games might bear some responsibility there, in the sense that video games may have allowed people to think that they could be video game testers as a career, which that's not really a career. Like, some people do it, yes, but often they're barely getting paid, if anything. It is no career path. You won't be hired as a video game tester when you're 40 years old, when you're trying to save up for savings and pay for your kids, and pay for a mortgage. And so there is not a soul without sin. YouTube also probably bears some blame for making people think that the jobs that will be available to them in the future are going to be these fun, interesting experiences like being a YouTuber, when for almost everybody you're not going to actually make money there. I can definitely attest to that as a YouTuber who is not making any money on their YouTube channel. So yeah, yes, we've mostly gotten away from the phase of everybody is either going to be a soldier or work in a factory. There's very few factory jobs and just 100% manual labor jobs out there. So we need more creative people. And there definitely will be a point in the future where maybe people don't understand programming, but they're painters, writers, musicians. They can make something that some large percentage of society can appreciate and contribute that way. But yeah, it is a pipe dream to think that the next generation, at least, is going to just, everybody is going to be able to do their dream job. It is much more realistic, frankly, that the United States, even being fairly late stage capitalistic, it's more realistic that they would introduce a universal basic income to the point where people don't have to work jobs unless they want to, or unless they want to earn extra money.
There's no retreat.
But I don't want to get into another economics rant, so start going over these games. Here we have a game called Cursed Night the House, which just looks like a horror asset flip game. I wonder, I don't think I could believe that these low effort horror asset flip games are made by legitimate people trying to make legitimate games. I think people go into this idea when they make these horror games that they are either A, money laundering through making these low effort games, or they are just trying to scam and trick people. I don't think there's an actual desire. But it's possible, I suppose, that people are deluded and they think that their terrible video games are actually good. I'm sure there's some people out there. We've seen a few. Here we have Love Colors Paint with Your Friends, which is just a paint by number game. $2.39 with some DLC, English only. That's easily dismissed.
There is not a soul without sin.
Let's go ahead and evolve this.
The real battle begins.
Punish the wicked. Let judgment fall.
All the fluffy hugs.
Just keep on playing. Should we heal again? No. Alright, here we have a game called Codename Mystery Babylon, which looks like nothing of interest. Early access $24.99. Yeah. Great example of a game that's way overpriced and not polished at all. I bet some of these bad games actually do have maybe decent stories in them. I wouldn't be surprised if there were a few hidden gems amongst them. But yeah, even if you put an absolutely great story in a RPG Maker game, since I'm just looking at the screenshots, since most people are just going to look at the screenshots first and foremost, it's going to get dismissed. Same is true for Skotos here, which is obviously an asset flip horror game. $6.29. Whole bunch of languages. I wish there was a better phrase than asset flip, but that is the phrase that's generally known. Here we have a game called Trap Genesis, so does that mean one of these anime characters is actually a boy? Let's see, the grand finale of the history of the Trap series. This is the creation, myth, and birth of the blessed world where gods, man, and cross-dressers can love each other freely. Yep. There have been some stupid pushes to recontextualize cross-dressers and traps, particularly as they're used in anime Japanese lingo, as transgendered people. Not accurate description. There's just a difference there. What gets me is the Rocky Horror Picture Show. At the time that the Rocky Horror Picture Show came out, they were referring, like Dr. Frankenfurter was referring to himself as a transsexual. A sweet transvestite from transsexual Transylvania is the exact phrase from the song. And in my mind, and I might be wrong about this, and it might very well just come down to opinion, I think, particularly for that character, transsexual, which is a phrase that they don't really want to use anymore, is the right way to describe it. He is cross-dressing for sexual pleasure and desires. He is not Dr. Frankenfurter. As far as the way the dialogues and songs are in Rocky Horror Picture Show, and this is very little to do with video games, but I'll spin off here and go on the rant. Like, there was nothing there that really made it feel like he thought that he was, he felt like he was a woman trapped in a man's body.
But make it fashion.
Like, I don't even, I just don't feel like that was the case. So I've always taken it that if you, in modern times, and see this is a problem of using old language that has now been redefined so quickly without really any consistent agreement on how the language should be used. I think it would be kind of silly to say Dr. Frankenfurter was transgendered. And that I think even in 2021, cross-dressers who are cross-dressing not just because they feel like the other gender, but are cross-dressing for a fetish, for a sexual fetish reason, should still use the transvestite and transsexual phrases. Maybe transvestite's still okay and transsexual it should be thrown to the side. I'd be willing to meet people halfway there. But that definitely certainly came into play when Fox several years later, several years ago, many years later after the original Rocky Horror Picture Show movie came out, made a remake for TV and had an actual transsexual woman, so transitioned from a originally born male to woman, play the new Dr. Frankenfurter. And it definitely made a different thing. I don't think it made a better thing. I don't think it made even as good a thing. Not just because of that one decision. I think what they did is they found a mushy middle in the remake. And of course you're going up against a beloved classic amongst its niche fandom, so the remake was never really going to succeed. But it felt like they often were confusing like cross-dressers with just high fashion punk people in leather jackets, which that changed a lot of the backdrop characters, and frankly they made a lot of the backdrop characters too good looking, and then they just did the exact same songs and almost the exact same stuff, but they did it kind of worse. I feel like they probably would have been better making some new songs or drastically changing the way the songs sounded, and they didn't, and that would have helped, like making a whole new taste on it, twist on it. Whereas there was a Jesus Christ Superstar that talk about a different musical, and I will compare this quickly and then stop talking about niche musicals. The original Jesus Christ Superstar was a made in the 70s movie that is pretty rough if you haven't ever seen it before. But then there is a PBS Great Masterpiece remake of it that modernizes it and makes it more of a stage play that completely redoes it and makes it a completely different thing. And I would recommend checking out the Great Masterpiece, Jesus Christ Superstar, above any of the other times it's been made. There's a on-Broadway version of it that doesn't really do anything new compared to the Great Masterpiece Pieces one, which is about an 11-year-old, 11 years ago turn of it. I think there's also just kind of a point where it comes down to the singers, and you just have to have a really good singers. I think it also comes down to which one you see first. And Fox, again, had a remake of Jesus Christ Superstar, which was a live stage performance of it. And in that one, so that you may notice a theme here, they had the main character of Jesus being sung by an African-American man, which, I mean, the real Jesus was a Middle Eastern man, so that's more accurate than a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white man by any means. But the stage performance, as far as what it presents and how it was decorated, was pretty lacking, and there's just not like anything that was sung particularly well. On top of that, stage performances are kind of annoying because any live performance of anything has a lot of people in the audience making noise, and that's annoying. So yeah. And I guess after that point, Fox, as a TV channel, stopped trying to remake their old movies that they had the licenses to. And that's all this really was for both the remake of Jesus Christ Superstar and Rocky Horror Picture Show, is that they just wanted to make something new to sell a soundtrack and to maintain the rights of those properties. Otherwise, I'm sure the contracts might revert to some other estates. But yeah, they definitely tried to make big kind of SJW changes on what were subversive shows that were already fairly liberal. I mean, Rocky Horror Picture Show and Jesus Christ Superstar, both not the types of things a conservative right-winger would appreciate. But the problem there is you're confusing SJWs of the modern era with more liberal kind of people of a previous generation. It's kind of the difference between first wave and second wave and third wave feminism. Like, very different age group of people, very different type of people, very different line of thinking. And in both cases, it runs into a real problem of tokenism. They hired a transgendered woman to be the main singer in Rocky Horror Picture Show, to flaunt her and put her up front and show her off. And they demanded that this transgendered woman act as a representative for her entire community. They hired an African-American man to play Jesus in Jesus Christ Superstar, and they flaunt him, to put him out there and make him be the representative for his entire community. And that's kind of the problem with modern SJWs, is that there is a level of just tokenistic thinking that doesn't make sense when you actually think it through. It comes off as silly and childish and just ridiculous. Okay, so that little rant done, we're back to Tribe Genesis. So, yeah. I'm guessing this guy is probably the trap. but one of these could be a trap too.
In my face.
That one could be a trap too.
Not with everyone around me.
You've also got some Fox Girls. This is a very positive $8.99 Japanese full audio.
I envy you.
So I guess I'd put this on the fall list. I don't know how many visual novels I'd really cover. I'd have to really think about the number of visual novels I'd want to cover and how often I'd want to talk about traps. I have no problem with playing a trap game. In fact, that is definitely a point of topic of conversation that we could talk about a decent amount with. If there's anything uncensored, obviously on YouTube I'd have to censor it, but I have no problem seeing that kind of material. Doesn't bother me in one way or the other. There clearly is a series here.
I trust you are here to sing my
Since
praises.
the phrase trap is a Japanese phrase, it's not really for me to tell the Japanese that they should stop using it and maybe find a better phrase, but I think it's being translated probably a little wrong anyways from Japanese to English. A trap in specific is supposed to be a cross-dresser who is passing and pretending to be, or at least they're passing in the sense that they look like their gender, whereas like drag queens, it's very bad form as a drag queen to look so good that you actually look like a woman. That's not really what they're going for when doing drag. And there definitely are cross-dressers who do want to be treated and thought of as that gender. But in most cases, in every instance I've seen traps in anime or anything, they are extremely shy characters that are dressing feminine, not really to trick people. And so the phrase trap is kind of an insulting one that they should try and find a different word for. It is in real world Japan incredibly not talked about and shunned to be a cross-dresser or gay or both. You don't have to be one to be the other, and I'm not sure a lot of people realize that. So a lot of the craziness you see in visual novels and Japanese entertainment is kind of in direct opposition and maybe slight experimentation away from the real way that Japanese people live and think. It is a country that is definitely run by older, very conservative people, and most of the people in Japan, I think, are fairly conservative mentally also. So that they'll let it be on the anime, but they won't let it happen in real life. Moving on, we're gonna go forever at this rate. We have a game called Last Man on Earth, which looks like a top-down twin-stick shooter. $2.99 English and Chinese. I talked way too much about traps and cross-dressers. Here we have a game called Sputnik, which looks like nothing of interest. $8.39 English only. You can close that. I could probably go on several rants about several other things that aren't video game related, and I sometimes let that happen on these live streams, but I definitely wouldn't want to try to make that my full-time hobby and try and make a different YouTube channel. Particularly like musicals, there's only so many of them that are, I think, actually good. So And sadly, I think most of them are Andrew Lloyd Webber musicals and Broadway plays and things like that. Here we have a game on Steam called Break, which doesn't look polished enough as far as the visuals. It's free, but it's Japanese only. Here we have a game called Medela, which looks like it's just an asset flip game more than anything else. Yep. I don't get this idea where there are these kind of low effort games that feel like they are gonna sell just because they're set in a country where games are not normally set. I guess at a certain level, most people have some level of national pride, and they are often disenfranchised, for lack of a better term, in the sense that there's no game set in Istanbul, or no stories being told about people that look like them. And that is a great motivation to make a good game, but it is a terrible motivation to make a low effort game. Like this game, Medela. Apparently my internet's running into problems. Well, I'm gonna just pretend like the internet's still working and go on. I just don't think we can do anything with this. Yeah, there it goes. Here we have a game on Steam, Hidden Objects Cartoon Fantasy. This looks like garbage. $1.59, English only. This was an interesting looking game. It looks like it's a hyper-realistic surgical robot simulator. I don't believe that these kind of microscopic surgeries happen as much as you think they do. If anything, I think there is a bit of a false narrative that gets sold that you're going to go in for a surgery and they're going to put 2 little holes in you to put in a cauterizer and a gripper, and then they're going to use that to cut out a small bit of cancer. When in a lot of surgeries, they're just going to cut you wide open and stretch you open with for lack of a better word, a carjack. Like heart surgery in particular, they're just gonna like crack your ribs and crack and split you open with it's called a rib spreader. This looks interesting. This looks like this might actually be something that if you were working to be a surgery, you might want to actually play with. Although, in all reality, there's probably better practice modes with better interfaces than just playing this with a VR headset and then not the right tools. It is free though, so this does also feel like something that they're putting on Steam to cross support an interface. And at some point in the future, we will hit a point where they are doing surgeries remotely, and surgeons can do surgeries just holding these sensor controllers. But I'm not 100% sure that, like, 1 year we will have surgeons doing remote surgeries across the world, and 12 months later we will have just automatic surgeries being done by robots and artificial intelligence. We already are at a point where artificial intelligence is looking over a bunch of x-rays and things, and they're finding that the artificial intelligence has a better success rate at diagnosing and marking areas of concern on x-rays. I could see a command and control robot doing surgery, doing it 3, 4, 5 times as fast, causing less bleeding, causing less mistakes, just really being able to outclass even the best surgeons ever to exist. Plus, that would be great for potential medical costs, but it probably wouldn't change too much. But yeah, nobody has ever not complained about the wait time in hospitals and automated surgeries. They'll probably start with things simple things to start with, and not do heart surgery or anything. But I could see some surgeries that are really simplistic being just overseen by a doctor or nurse. Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam here called Terracan, point and click adventure. I don't think this is visually polished enough for what it looks like. $3.59 English only. You know, we're seeing a lot of games that are really cheap lately. We haven't seen a lot of like even decent quality games that want $50, $60. Here we have one called Where's My Lunch, which looks like garbage, for $8.49. So I'm wondering if we aren't going to hit a point where there is just straight up a slump right now, and then in a month or two we're going to start seeing more games come out for the Christmas season. I'm not sure if we actually aren't past the Christmas season at this point, and there's going to be very little consoles and games available for purchase for this Christmas.
Prepare for defeat.
So yeah, there may just be not that much available for this Christmas. Here we have a game on Steam called Dogs.io, which doesn't look like anything. Seems like you run around and you get the dogs to follow you, which that's maybe the beginning of a gameplay mechanic, but then you need a lot more than that. And you'd need to automatically zoom out as you got larger and larger groups. $3.99 English only. I don't think there's a game there. We have Axion Legends of the Artifact Prologue, which this might not be the most defined heads-up display, but it does look like a actual game. It kind of feels though like it might just be a cell phone dungeon crawler that's been ported. It's a prologue right now, so we can just wait till the real game comes out. Free to play, English and Russian. Here we have Fantasy Match Puzzle, which we can immediately close. $1.99 English only. Here we have a game called Dum Dum, which seems to be a collection of old PC games. Maybe there's something else. I don't think there really is anything else here. There might be some mystery inside of this, but it's probably not worth playing. $12.74 English, allegedly full audio. I have the doubts. The problem here is either you're going to have a game that looks awful and has what you think is a good story hidden amongst an awful minigames, or you're just going to have awful minigames. And neither one of those are good options. There's no way the actual gameplay part of this game would be interesting. And hiding, saying there's a mystery in a pile of poop does not generally encourage me to want to search through the pile of poop.
Soul's not ripe yet.
Next, we have a game on Steam just by Asian characters. Looks like a standard RPG Maker Chinese game. 179 Chinese only. Here we have a game called Anti-Snake, which is 179 English only. Maybe we're going to start seeing a lot of games at 179. Here we have a game called Shattered Dream, which looks very pixely and uninteresting, for $9.99 English only. Let's see, attack here. I guess that's all we can do. See, next we have a game on Steam here called Oath of Miko, which looks like nothing, just an RPG garbage game. Early access, $3.59 Chinese only. I don't think this actually is made by with RPG Maker even. It's just looks bad. Looks way too zoomed out for those characters. Here we have a game called Koshmar, which just looks like an asset flip horror game. $5.99 English only. Here we have a game called Plague Infection, which looks like maybe it's a box moving game, but no, I don't think it is. I think it's tagged Hidden Object and Dungeon Crawler. $2.39 English and Russian. I don't think I want to play any game that potentially has to do with an infection or a plague at this point. You would have to really sell that to me. You'd have to convince me to go against my instincts, my first instinct there. Video Game Chronicle says THQ Nordic announces new games including Destroy All Humans 2 Remake and Outcast 2, plus a new SpongeBob 3D platformer. We had already talked about this, but I figured we might want to check this out a little bit more. See, one of the things that THQ Nordic I think is doing fairly well here is by quickly releasing the sequel in a remake fashion like you released the original game, you're building confidence that there really is going to be a release of each of those games that were made in the past. Because the last thing I want to do is play the remake of a game that is like the first game in a series, and then have to jump back and play the non-remake version of a game because SpongeBob SquarePants The Cosmic Shake, I guess, is going to have him jumping different SpongeBob-esque dimensions.
On to the next life.
Yeah. I definitely wouldn't want to have to jump back to play Destroy All Humans 2 right after playing the remake of Destroy All Humans 1. I don't know if I would actually play either one of those games. I probably would. I imagine I'd have an okay time with the Destroy All Humans series, having never played them before, but I also am fairly certain that the games would feel a little old. And then Outcast 2 A New Beginning. I assume that this is a straight up new game also. And I know Outcast 1 had a big fandom, but I don't know if Outcast 1 ever was good enough in the 2 or 3 versions that were released to actually want to play them. Looking at this trailer for Outcast 2, it is questionable whether you wouldn't want to just play something like Monster Hunter instead. But yeah. I guess this is more of a first-person shooter with superhuman abilities experience. Then, how many videos do they have here? Jagged Alliance 3, I'm not really interested in. Superpower 3, I'm probably less interested in. Let's see. Outcast 2 is developed by the original team by the first Outcast Appeal Studio. THQ says the sequel in the 1999 open-world action classic features fast-paced third-person combat as well as non-linear science fantasy story with dynamic plot progress based on the player's action. Okay, that sounds like something.
Smiles are the best medicine. You were done for. Faith is an expensive business.
Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says cheaters are already spoiling Call of Duty Vanguard's multiplayer beta. Anti-cheat tech has promised for later this year. I also heard a kind of story opposite to this, saying one of the betas is installing a kernel level, basically anti-cheat / spyware onto your computer that doesn't get uninstalled when you uninstall the program. I guess my only understanding of the idea of cheaters in a beta, if they truly are cheaters, which my first instinct is to say maybe there aren't anywhere as many cheaters as they think, and people are just better at the game than they expected, or something along that lines. But my only thought, if there truly are cheaters, is that games like that just have this built-in assumed marketplace for selling accounts, and so cheaters are playing in the beta so that day one they can sell accounts that are very leveled up. But honestly, nearly every story we hear about cheaters or banning players for cheating or something else is from a Call of Duty franchise, which honestly just makes me think like that Activision Blizzard is being run by a bunch of lunatics, which seems to be the case, and they've got a chip on their shoulder of accusing people to be cheaters and then banning people and just being bad stewards of their community and their game. Here we can say Call of Duty's official social accounts openly taunted, pissed off cheaters in a video last month. In August, it was announced another 100,000 players have been banned from Warzone in the game's latest action. Yeah, it seems like they are very, very, very happy to ban players. And 600,000 accounts, even if that's only 50,000 players who were wrongly permabanned, that's still 50,000 pissed off players. Yeah. And we really just don't hear this narrative. It is out of line with every other main game series. You don't hear about Gearbox and Take-Two banning people from cheating in forgot. Borderlands 3. Yeah, that's the name of it. Yeah, and there was definitely fairly easy ways to cheat in at least Borderlands 1, and they had a system where they said, well, all you're really going to do is ruin the experience for yourself, so we don't care. But we don't hear about a huge amount of cheaters on Destiny's servers that often, and a huge amount of permabans on Destiny's. It doesn't get announced, at least. There's a decent amount of Counter-Strike Go accounts that get permabanned and backbanned. Steam never comes out and taunts that. It's really only Activision Blizzard doing that. Moving on. Video Games Chronicle says Sony's movie boss says he expects more games companies buyouts. The Sony Pictures CEO believes movie consolidation has peaked and games will now be the new growth area. That kind of doesn't mean anything at all, though, that the Sony Pictures chairman and CEO Tony Vinciquerra gives his opinion when he's not the one in charge of Sony Entertainment Interactive, which is basically a completely separate division of Sony, and I think fairly disconnected subsidiary of Sony. Yeah, it would be the equivalent of having your brother or sister talk for you. It's like, yeah, they can say whatever they want, but it doesn't mean it's true or you're gonna listen. Unless, and this is really the only unless scenario where this news would actually mean anything, unless he starts to have direct control of Sony Entertainment Interactive, which that might be the case. We may see the current Jim Ryan, I believe, is the current guy in charge of Sony Entertainment Interactive, SEI. So yeah, if that happens, then it's a different experience. It's a different thing. But if that does not happen, then it is kind of just pointless conjecture. Moving on, Video Game Chronicle says the Blizzard Studios says consumers should do, quote, do what they feel is right, end quote, when considering the Diablo 2 remake. Next week's remake will be Activision Blizzard's first release since a discrimination lawsuit. Yeah. And I think for me personally, I don't see a real reason to play Diablo 2 Remastered now. I'm still kind of waiting on the same thing I was waiting for nearly 7 years ago, which is for Diablo to come to Steam. And since it's probably never going to do that, I think I would just play Torchwood or even maybe Path of Exile, but Path of Exile I think has problems too. There's just newer games to play. It's a shame somebody hasn't done a great job of stealing the Diablo theme and imagery and making a game that really works on that. Doom, I guess the Doom remake is about the closest one that makes a first-person shooter of it. If Borderlands had more of a demon Diablo type feel, if there was a Borderlands / Diablo game, that would be interesting too. Something that wasn't a whole top-down element. And I know there are some games like that. They just failed to grab attention. And in the long run, that might be the problem anyways, is that even now, going back and playing Diablo 2, if there weren't so many other caveats around the idea of playing Diablo 2, and the idea of separating the art from the artist, is very hard in this case, because you were intentionally and actively supporting a company that sounds like they're total garbage. I just don't know if Diablo 2 or any new game can have that relevancy that it once had when there was severely less competition as far as people's game time came. Moving on, Video Games Chronicle says, here's the first look at the Nintendo Switch's OLED model in the wild. It definitely feels like a prototype as far as the controller. And I'm not sure you really want white controllers. That feels like that's going to get dirty very fast. It feels kind of brown already, and that may just be the lighting. The screen, okay, looks good. It looks like you could easily get a little bit more bezel on the edges, but then you'd probably change the ratio a little bit more. I could see, though, having a screen that was slightly wider than a 16:9 720 resolution, which is I think what it's at, and then had some buttons and interfaces on the sides. That way you could potentially touch the screen to hit some buttons, or without the screen actually being covered up, or you could have some notifications. If the Nintendo Switch did a lot more in general, it would be great, instead of it being this unitasker in an age where unitaskers have no right to exist. Of course, it is just straight insanity to believe that Nintendo would bother to program the Switch to do much of anything. Here's some basic thoughts. Can the Switch act as a clock? Can you put it on the desk, plug it in, and have it put the time on the front of the screen? I don't own a Switch. I don't know. Maybe there's some eShop software that would do that, but that definitely should be just a default thing. Is if you're on the main menu, you plug it in, it times out to a screensaver that shows the clock. Can it act as a digital picture frame? And so it would just cycle through pictures. Again, every answer maybe there might be some software you can buy that will simulate that, but it feels like that should be built in. Can it stream Netflix? I don't know. Can it browse the internet? Think very poorly.
Harder, faster, holier.
Let's see. Can it be a white noise machine? And can it be a music player? Can it be a video player for local files? Can you put any kinds of files on it just as a external USB stick? Can it tell you RSS feeds or weather? Can it act as a calculator? Can it connect to a calendar or set up a local calendar? I doubt it can make phone calls in any internet like phone call chat way outside of a game. Let's see, what else would you really want it to do? Can you lock the screen even on a Switch? Stop somebody else from playing it. Can it display, if this is lost, return it to this person type messages?
This is where I truly shine.
Yeah. Can it display medical emergency information? You know it has like direct to switch communication, so you'd think there would be at least a chat service between two switches in the same near area. I don't know if that really is a thing, though. Like, at the very basic, you should be able to use a Switch, and it should be programmed to do as much as like a general installation of Ubuntu, or yeah, let's just go with Ubuntu Linux. Like, if you looked at most of the apps on Ubuntu Linux by default that are installed, I think all of those generally should be supported and ready to run on a Switch. Things like calculators, clocks, world clocks, calendars, note. Can you take notes on the Switch? Can you make voice notes? Can you do anything? Like, Switches, I know, are supposed to be game consoles, but they're not even that good as game consoles. Now, in all fairness, if you just took everything I just asked and flipped it around and asked, can the Xbox Series X or the PlayStation 5 do those things? I don't know if any of them can do those things either. And at a certain point, it just points out the silliness of what a cell phone can do versus what a console can do. And there needs to be, I suspect, a element of experimentation in which they maybe do events or challenges and bring in student programmers or just programmers who want to work on contest or spec or contract or status to add code to their default interface. Even when we do get notifications of improvements on an interface like the Switch, it's like 2 years later you get Bluetooth headset integration, and in all fairness, programming to get Bluetooth to work is a nightmare, but it shouldn't have taken Nintendo 2 years to do it. On the other hand, I'm not as certain that a Bluetooth headphone would connect to an Xbox Series X or PlayStation 5. It should, but I don't know if it does.
Mother, father, come on.
But I know a PC can do all those things I just suggested. And I know if it can't do it, that somebody ambitious enough can program it. Really not a lot to say about the OLED model, though. The screen does look better. I'll grant you that. I don't know if I would care enough, though, to spend extra $50 to get an OLED model for the Switch. I think if I was ever going to get a Switch, I'd try and get a very used, cheap one that's not scratched too bad, because I probably will scratch it myself, so I'm not going to even be too concerned about that. But I just want to play maybe half a dozen games and then be done with it.
No!
Moving on, Video Game Chronicles says Quantic Dream is working on a Star Wars game, it's claimed. Lucasfilm recently confirmed it would be listening to pitches for the IP. Quantic Dream was one of the companies that was being attacked for a long time, and it kind of went nowhere, so the accusations against, I believe, David Cage, the Quantic Dream CEO, kind of has done nothing. It's like January 2018, a French publication reported highlighting Quantic Dream's alleged toxic workplace culture and financial malpractice. Quantic Dream sued those two newspapers later that year. And honestly, I think Le Monde and Mediapart have been doing the same to Ubisoft, if not those two French companies, French newspapers. It seems to be quite the pastime and just standard fare for there to be questionable accusations made in French press, and it then gets repeated a lot in the West without really being vetted. I mean, 2018, you're talking 3 years ago, and it never went anywhere other than the newspapers getting sued for slander. That to me makes it seem like a Quantic Dream was pretty much in the right. And I think we'll probably say something much closer to what I just said about Ubisoft in a couple years also, because it really just never feels like there's any meat on the bones, particularly on the accusations of the French companies. Part of the problem certainly comes down to the idea of how it is questionable how a French employee would put up, if a French employee would put up with being treated rudely, because frankly they're kind of rude already. So so yeah, France is not like the United States where people are desperate to keep their jobs. France has lots of unions, lots of protection, and it's fairly easy to tell somebody to just screw off and quit the job. So I don't know how Quantic Dream could create a anywhere as toxic as some of the Western companies' environment. That would be quite the feat.
I'm not lonely. Not with everyone around me.
Moving on. Video Game Chronicles says nearly 500 Xbox and Dreamcast prototypes plus unreleased games have been uncovered. Project Deluge, the latest batch, continues to preserve pre-release games. Which Hidden Palace is the preservation group. The idea of game prototypes probably are good for historical preservation, but not really particularly interesting for just people who want to play retro games. No, I doubt there's very few people that want to play the bad versions, unfinished versions of a game. There could be some backporting, I think that's the right phrase, that you could do if there were like features that didn't make it to the final version of a game. You might be able to take a prototype that did have that feature and use the code to add new features to old games, but that would be more on a case-by-case basis, and it's unlikely that there's a guarantee any game has any interest in doing that, or any program has any interest in doing that. Apparently this new collection, they've gotten 1,700 unique prototypes and early builds in all. This new find includes 750 PlayStation 2 builds, including a tech demo for an unreleased alien game called Earth Assault, 80 Sega Saturn prototypes, and even a selection of Philips CDI discs, which honestly there couldn't be that many CDI discs that were in development. 370 PlayStation prototypes such as Aftershock, Clay Fighter Extreme, Dark Rift, Deus, Dream Team Basketball, Dungeons & Dragons, Tower of Doom, Maiden, NFL 96, and Paperboy. They say the software is obtained from closed media outlets, developers, and various collectors. So it's been quite the collaborative effort, according to them, as far as getting a lot of these prototypes. Let's see, do we want to do this?
Look to the zenith, for there I will rise.
Video Game Chronicles says Call of Duty Vanguard's multiplayer beta has been extended. The cross-play test will now run until September 22nd. Melty Blooded type Lumina has Noel versus Michael Roa of Wildemjong gameplay, which this is an anime boy, so at the very least we can see not every single character in Multi-Blood type Lumina is an anime girl. It just seems like they'd been highlighting a lot of them.
Though I set, I will rise again.
I think technically he's probably showing the most skin with his shirt open. Although that is an interesting question. Does the anime girl with the legs being exposed on the dress showing like mid-thigh in square footage terms, that might be an equivalent or even larger amount of skin, but is a shirtless guy in most people's mind considered showing more skin than legs. I guess I would assume a lot of people run it through just kind of like appropriateness of the situation, and in most Western societies it is appropriate and acceptable to have dresses and skirts that show slightly above the knee thighs and legs. So that at a certain point, I think for most people is not even an issue, where it's very rarely an appropriate situation for a guy to have his shirt on but then completely unbuttoned, showing his full chest. Whereas actually if he had the shirt off and was at a beach, then it would be more acceptable, and same would be true if he was wearing a bikini, or if she was wearing a bikini and he was wearing swim trunks. But then that gets into a weird situation about what is the situation really when you have anime characters fighting each other, because yeah, they seem like they're all over the place, and this guy does feel like he's probably a vampire, if that changes the equation. Honestly, it's really just a nightmare of there is no consensus, and there are no rules. Some people get upset about one thing and other people get upset about another, and at the end of the day you eventually learn that people are upset not because of anything that's really going on a lot of times, but because they just want to be upset, or because it gets them attention, or it's just the only way they know how to live their lives, unfortunately. Moving on, we have a Gemetsu article. Wanderer has been delayed to Q4 2021. PlayStation VR Physical Edition has been announced. I don't recognize this game, Wanderer, though. It looks like a VR game. Kind of feels like Portal. Yeah. And see, this is both what the Talos Principle and Portal effectively established, is that if you're going to have a game that takes you into a big empty world puzzle game, you're going to have to establish a very interesting world. Seems like you're doing some kind of time traveling, bringing objects from different parts of the different realities. I don't know if there really is any a lot of puzzles gameplay for Wanderer. But yeah, it looks slightly interesting. It's a Steam VR and a PlayStation VR game, which tells me that I suspect we're going to have fairly recently from now a announcement of a PlayStation VR upgrade of some sort, or just a big push for more PlayStation VR content, because they've kind of dropped the ball there. Here we have a game on Steam called Survival Zone. Of course, it also could be the other case. This is just a tower defense game, $1.99 English and Chinese. It could be the case that they're wrapping up PlayStation VR and these are just the last games that were still in development. Here we have a game called Beanstalker, which looks like a VR game. don't know if there's really... They're calling it a looter shooter in VR. Interesting. Early access, $29.99. I'm going to put this on the follow list and see if people actually like it. Let's see, what can we do over here? Just play this. Here we have a game called Cube-Wrenth, which doesn't look like anything of interest. $1.79 English Russian. Here we have a game called Pepe's Adventure, which, yeah, doesn't look like a game I would play. Looks pretty simplistic. One screen puzzle games. It claims to be $10.79. Whole bunch of language support, allegedly. Let's see. This. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says Digital Eclipse has, quote, begun discussions to remaster Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Disney and Capcom have seen the fan requests loud and clear. It's kind of ridiculous that it's taken them this long to get around to the idea of remaking any of the Marvel vs. Capcom series. So, when you look at this big collection of Marvel characters, you're gonna have some issues, certainly. Let's see, here's Doctor Doom, Captain America. Is this Cable? I don't know. Here, that is probably Sentinel. Is this supposed to be Storm back here? Magneto. Scott Summers, Juggernaut, a less blue version of Thanatos, Saberwolf. How many of these can I name? I guess would be the question. And then I guess this is Hulk, bright green Hulk. I think this is Samurai, Wolverine. Most of these characters don't look like this though, and are in different suits. I don't think this is Silver Surfer, but it might be. Psylocke is not an interesting character that would be here. So you'd be adding some characters certainly that haven't done anything, particularly when you're talking X-Men characters who haven't had a good Disney release. So Disney would have to really go crazy with that. Here you have Venom, here you have Spider-Man, here you have not Jubilee. I don't think. I have no idea who this character is though. Maybe Pixie. So not a terrible lineup. I don't know who this one-eyed character is. And there might be a character here that I can barely even see in this visual mess. It's a lot of characters for a fighting game. But the game is already done, so just remaking it isn't that hard. Unless you're going to drastically change the appearance and go 3D. But yeah. If they came back with this and said, no X-Men, we're not doing any X-Men, you've got a problem there. Because then you got Thanatos, Spider-Man, Venom, who's not really that interesting, Silver Surfer, the Hulk, Captain America. So you drop from potentially about 20 characters on the Marvel side down to about 4. And then when you look at the Capcom side, there's just a lot of characters here that would be hard to recognize. There's some Street Fighter characters, which obviously you can bring in those fairly easily, but you're gonna either make up for removing other characters and then bring in lesser Street Fighter characters or new versions of Street Fighter characters that look different, which that would be. probably not well received. I think maybe this guy's from Samba de Amigo. I don't know where this character is from. Maybe Darkstalkers. I see there are some Darkstalkers characters here, so I guess you'd bring those back. You have some Mega Man characters and some other Capcom games. But yeah, if you get rid of or update the Capcom game characters, you could make a big problem here. Less likely to happen though. Like if they updated all the Street Fighter characters to look different, that would feel weird. Like this is one of those cases where it would 100% be a mistake to do anything other than a fan favorite, a fan remaster of it. Just make it run on a new engine, run a little bit faster, and make all the characters look exactly the same. If you're redrawing things, redraw them using artificial intelligence just so that they're less pixely. That's all I think anybody is really gonna want.
Embrace them in your prominence.
Hey, no dirty tricks.
Like when you look here at Marvel vs. Capcom and its 3-on-3 fighting system, this sure looks a little rough, and so like new visuals on top of this could help, but you really wouldn't want to change much. And the way the fighting stances and the meter bars and the heads-up display and all of that pretty much has to feel the same. It can look slightly different. This is something I think that will probably happen, but they're going to have to be really careful about it. And we'll have to hope that Digital Eclipse is capable of doing that. We've been going 4 hours and 45 minutes? What am I doing? Am I like just talking forever today? Yeah, I might just be rambling a ton today. I'm gonna have to check how long this is. It's maybe the stream that never ends at this point. Digital Eclipse, formerly named Backbone Entertainment, had developed a digital-only port of Capcom vs. Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on the Xbox 360 and PS3, but then it was pulled from each systems in 23 following the expiration of Capcom's contract with Marvel, which that probably highlights an issue. And see, this is not a Digital Eclipse game. This is the trailer for the other Marvel game. So we know there are Marvel games in development, and this, what was this called, Dark Phoenixes or something like that. This one is definitely willing to show the characters in more classic outfits. So I wouldn't be super... Midnight Suns was the name of it. I wouldn't be super surprised if Disney is okay with this, but then Capcom wants to negotiate a very lucrative Japanese style contract with them that expires after a few years. It makes maybe an argument to get the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 remake in the first 6 months, if it does come out, if it's of any interest to you. Although, and then on the other hand, it might be more of a case that you should just play Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on a MAME emulator and just play it like play the original version. Like, there is also things you would have to set up, such as netcode and good engines. if that plays poorly, Libretto might do a better job about emulating online experiences than whatever the official remaster would offer. And that's just something we'll have to wait and see about. Alright, moving on. Video Games Chronicle says Neil Druckmann will direct some of the Last of Us TV series. The Naughty Dog co-president will take the director's chair for at least part of the season, which at this point I think this is the ultimate evolution. It's weird that they'd have a real person's face next to a 3D face scan of Ellie, unless they're trying to make the comparison that they literally made this Ellie character off of his face, and that it's just he's a narcissist. But yeah, this definitely feels like this could be the ultimate evolution of video game developers that secretly want to be producers and TV producers and movie producers and don't really want to make video games. In a funny way, it's always been slightly assumed that a lot of game developers and writers and directors were failed TV and movie directors. Nowadays, it's kind of a step backwards and a sign of failure to go from the lesser financial successful go to a lesser financial successful field such as TV and movies when video games make way more money and are way more popular. That being said, I could also see this being a way in which Neil Druckmann is trying his best to exit from dealing with video gamers in general, since video gamers weren't super happy with Last of Us 2, and he seemed to not be super happy with video gamers. Right.
You're in good hands.
Guess we had to do that.
Done for. A fitting end.
There we go. Next, we have a game on Steam called My Name is Human, which looks like nothing. 59 cents English only. Here we have Hide, Seek, Survive, which just looks like a horror asset flip game. Free to play, English only. Is it single player? Yes, it is. So, yeah. I have no idea why they're even bothering to sell it if it's free. Here we have Haunted Hotel, the Axiom Butcher Collector's Edition from Big Fish Games. $8.99 English full audio. Big Fish Games very all over the place with its pricing. Here we have a game called Blockdown. Arguably, maybe that just means that Big Fish Game actually is evaluating what they think a game is worth and selling it in for that amount of money instead of just trying to overprice everything. Here we have a 3D block pushing game. I don't think there's enough here that I'd want to play this, however. $4.99 English only. It's too simplistic a concept. Let's see. Do this. And then do this. Then evolve this.
A fitting end. Move out! Annihilate them!
The Flame Knights never back down.
Here we have a game on Steam called Operation Boomslag, which just looks like it's a player versus player ugly game. Early access $14.99 English only. Here we have a game called Everpixel Tactics, which looks like nothing. $9.99 English only. Here we have a game called The Island of Dr. Epstein, which I assume maybe this is an Epstein Island reference. Maybe. Actually, I'm a little surprised that more people didn't try to make troll games based on the Epstein news, but I guess it's not very classy to potentially make a game around a pedophile island, or accused pedophile island. English and Russian full audio. But yeah, I guess I could see why maybe Steam also would have blocked anything in that vein. Also, I guess the whole Epstein thing is in that awkward position where there's two very different opinions that aren't directly in conflict. One is that he seemed to be a bad guy, and the other being that he seemed to have been summarily murdered in prison and covered up. So I don't think there was really any satisfaction in that story or reason to want to bring it back up. GameDeveloper.com says that game service provider Keywords has found its new CEO. The company intends to continue expanding to become the go-to provider with scale within the game industry. So Bertrand Bodson is now the new CEO, if that interests anybody. Here we have a game on Steam called Nico Hacker Plus, Nico being the Japanese word for cat, and these are cat girls. This feels like this is just a slightly better polished version versus of Hentai vs. Evil, and it does have a 18+ mod for free, and then apparently another one that's 99 cents. Otherwise it's selling for $2.24. It is English, allegedly full audio. And it says you're hacking all the pictures, which makes me think you are probably not really doing anything. There's a whole costume pose mode it's showing off first and foremost in the trailer, and it's not until you get halfway through the 38-second trailer that you see the real game, which is going onto the computer and looking at pictures, and I guess maybe you're finding something in the pictures. Maybe, but I doubt it. I doubt there's really a game here. And I guess that technically resets the idea of an adult game on Steam, but that's not a high quality game. And there's still definitely a feeling that either there's absolutely no curation going on as far as adult games on Steam and games in general on Steam, or there's a anti-curation going on where they let the bad adult games through, and then either nobody is trying to get the good adult games on, or there just aren't any good adult games. Moving on, GameDeveloper.com says EA will let players look inside some FIFA 22 loot boxes using preview packs. They had already talked about this, and yeah, that doesn't solve the problem of loot boxes by any means. It's just kind of a stupid concept. Here we have a game called One Fateful Night, which just looks like a horror asset flip game. $4.99 English only. Kina Bridge of Spirits launch and photo mode trailers are now out, according to Gamatsu. Physical edition out due out in November. So there's a launch trailer. There's a photo mode trailer. I think probably I've already seen the launch trailer. Yeah, we're So it's one of those games where it is just going to come down to how well it actually plays, so you're going to really need some reviews. And then a photo mode trailer. I mean, showing off photo modes are nice and all, but if anything, that kind of makes it feel like your game doesn't have much going for it. Yeah. I can't even think of the last time a photo mode was even talked about in a game. It has to have been at least 2.5 years ago, and it would have been something like Hellblade's Senua's Sacrifice, which does have a NVIDIA, I believe it's Ansel, photo mode built into it. And honestly, even in that case, there aren't a lot of instances in which taking a photo makes any sense at all. I like the idea of NVIDIA or even DirectX just having photo modes default built into all games, but it really should be far past the idea of being a selling point and just be the bog standard features.
Save yourselves.
Here we have a game on Steam called Universe 25, which looks like a point-and-click adventure. I'm a sucker for point-and-click adventures, so I kind of want to say yes to this, but the graphics look pretty bad, so I may say no to it. This looks like this is a fairly dark and empty point-and-click. He seems to just wander around empty, dark environments. Universe 25, The Loop. $4.49, English only. Alright, well, I'll put this on the follow list and see if it gets reviews, but I'm suspecting the answer will be no.
Smiles are the best medicine.
Here we have a Gematsu article. They always run. Launches on October 20th, which seems like a guy with 3 arms. Bunch of weird animation. See, and this looks cool and all, but you kind of know that this is not the game that's actually going to happen. So yeah, I heavily suspect the game looks completely different than that, and it's just going to be a tiny, like, zoomed out game. And it's hard to not think of that as deceptive advertising sometimes when they show off these trailers. Gematsu says Pokemon Trading Card Game Live has been announced for PC, iOS, and Android. Soft launch and global opening beta due out later in 2021. I guess I have to jump over to this. I've not been super thrilled with Shadowverse, and so the plan would still be to jump over to the Ben Brode Marvel card game, but yeah, I think for our live streams we may be completely ready to jump over as soon as possible. I guess I'll try my best to get into the beta and live stream this. Oh, but I can't, can I? I guess that's gonna be the ultimate question. If a whole bunch of streamers start streaming this and get DMCAs from the Pokemon Company or Nintendo, even though the Pokemon Company owns Pokemon and Nintendo is just one company there, that's not gonna stop them 1 second from DMCAing people.
It looks like I'm up. Harder, faster, holier. You're done for. Put your legs into each prayer.
Yeah, if I hadn't just thought about that, I would have just by default said, yeah, I'm gonna play the Pokemon game and start streaming the Pokemon game. We'll give it some time and see if there's DMCA issues, or if they come out and specifically say that people can stream it. If that's the case, then I think going to Pokemon trading card game. Pokemon as a trading card game, I think, is a super simplistic game. Probably too simplistic for live streaming anyways, but yeah, I would be willing to try it, certainly, and at least see how crazy it is. So there's a teaser trailer here. Let's go ahead and just look at the sneak peek gameplay trailer, see what that's about. Seems to me like you'll have the cards, you'll have little not avatars, just regular avatars, and you'll just play. I think the Pokemon game has also changed severely since I played it probably 15 years ago last. But yeah, if we can stream this, I think there is an argument towards this. But take note that these trailers are not saying Nintendo at the front of them.
It's justice.
Uh,
No beast could manage this.
So yeah, maybe the Pokemon Company will be less lenient there. But also it could just be chock full of Pokemon music and other things that Nintendo claims to own or somebody else claims to own. So yeah, this potentially could be a nightmare for a lot of people that try to stream the Pokemon card game. But yeah, I wouldn't bat an eye for a second to drop Shadowverse to play Pokemon and maybe get some more viewers. Don't think I'd really change my format much of the rambling and going through video game news, but yeah, maybe I'd bring around some more people. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Smack Studio Early Access, which looks like it's an attempt at a Smash Bros. Clone, but it's in a very early stage and not something that should be on Steam. It's free, early access, third-party EULA. Let's see. Atlas has made a Western Persona 25th anniversary website. I don't know if there's really anything that they're going to offer. It says more announcements are to come, but right now they seem to mostly just want you to buy their merch. What that does indicate to me is that if there is a new Persona series game in the works, it is going to be, I think, sold worldwide, global release, and not staggered, and very possibly released on PC. Here we have a game on Steam called Drone Gladiator, which looks like nothing of interest. $3.99, English and Russian. Yes, I know that. Video Game Chronicles says a new Disney Classic Games collection will reportedly include the SNES Aladdin and Jungle Book game. Last time I looked at this, though, it seems like that pretty much just means they're taking games that had already been re-released individually and bundling them all together as one game, which is not super surprising. Here we have a game on Steam called The Elm Game, which looks like it's something kind of like Chinese checkers, but the board seems a little different. Is this single player? It says it is. $4.99. Local multiplayer, single player versus a computer with 3 difficulty levels. I don't know if there's enough game here. $4.99. I'm gonna put this on the follow list just because I haven't seen this, and usually my complaint about something like this is that maybe you could do this in Tabletop Simulator. In this case, I'm not sure that by default there is a Tabletop Simulator option to play this game. Let's see. Komatsu says The Good Life launches October 15th. It's taken them a really long time, and it's been delayed a couple times. But also I think the Good Life has just been overhyped. Like, you play as this girl who moves to this country village and I think turns into a cat during night times, or a dog. I think there's probably more to the story now. It seems like there's a murder mystery also involved, and we're starting to see other characters besides just the main character. The only reason why this game has any coverage at all, though, is because it's being made by a famous person, Hidetake Suhiros, which I'm not even sure what he did at this point, but he worked on something big, and that's given him enough of rope to potentially hang himself with. Of course, we saw with Balan Wonderworld, that one of the people who worked on Sonic was allowed to make a game, and it was just a huge failure, and lost him his job, really. Here we have a game on Steam called Sorcerer Knights. Doesn't look like anything of interest. $4.24 English, Spain, Spanish. Here we have a game called Protect the Earth, which looks like nothing. $1.19 English. Here we have a game called Tit Tot, not to be confused with Tick Tock, although probably intentionally named so to cause confusion. Looks like it's both a precision platformer and a slide puzzle game, 2 genres I really hate. So in most cases, 59 cents, English, Russian, Chinese. I doubt there'd be any reason why that would ever end up on my wish list. Video Game Chronicles says the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X are reportedly going on sale at Best Buy stores for the first time in 2021. Flagship locations are expected to offer the consoles physically on September 23rd. Which, yeah. I bet storefronts need to justify, right now in particular, existing. So, selling IOUs or pre-orders or we'll ship it to you sales aren't going to cut it. They really could use units in the store.
Is it edible? Only one way to find out.
There is an interesting thing I suppose to take from the death of brick and mortar stores, is that while the quality of delivering things hasn't really increased by that much over the past decade or two, the confidence or willingness to have something shipped has increased greatly. There's still plenty of delivery people who don't do their jobs and drop packages and kick them and throw them all the time. But the customer service of saying, oh, this was damaged in delivery and we're willing to replace this $3,000 TV because our delivery man dropped it, that has gone up, I think, a lot more. Maybe they were always willing to replace things, but it would be interesting to see the numbers as far as just how much gets damaged in shipping when using a truck to ship something to a storefront versus how much gets damaged in shipping when using UPS or FedEx to deliver something directly to someone's house. And there's plenty of confidence now around the idea of buying something before you see it, where that was out of the question a couple decades ago. Consoles still, though, are going to be something that you want day one. It's going to be something older parents will buy for their kids, and they'll want to wrap up and hand as a package. Although we are quickly getting to a generation where parents are just going to hand Amazon boxes to their kids and say, Merry Christmas, Happy Birthday. Moving on, I'm going to try and rush here and finish the stream, which is going crazy as far as its timer. I hope this isn't broken. It says we've been recording for 5 hours now. I don't think that's the case. It doesn't feel like 5 hours. Maybe. Ooh, maybe it has been. Niantic is going to shut down Catan World Explorers after hitting a design roadblock. Trying to adapt such a well-designed board game to a global location-based MMO game was a tough challenge. Yeah, it also sounds like a dumb idea in the first place. It obviously didn't think it through. Video Game Chronicles says Owen Hart will appear in the AEW video game. Legendary wrestler hasn't been in a WWE game for 20 plus years due to his tragic death. Now, Owen Hart died how? He was working... Is it gonna tell me how he was died? He tragically died in May of 1999 while working for the WWF, as it was known at the time, after an accident at the WWF's Over the Edge pay-per-view event. Was this the one where he fell to his death, dressed as gold dust? Yeah. This is not Gold Dust. Portraying his Blue Blazers superhero character, Hart was supposed to be lowered from the arena's rafters on a wire, but instead fell 78 feet. Landing in the ring, he was declared dead later that night. The Hart family sued the WWF after the incident and received $18 million in a settlement, which is frankly a small amount of money even for 1999. But the Hart widows refused to allow the company to profit off his name again and place him in the Hall of Fame. As such, Hart hasn't appeared in WWE since 1999. Okay. That's better than some of the other stories where people went crazy and had like chronic brain trauma from wrestling, it seems, and killed their whole family and themselves, which that was one of the stories. Or WWE China being erased from history. So, and I'm sure there's been plenty of other stories of characters that have just been kicked to the curb. And at a certain level, if you want all the nostalgia of some of the older characters, you kind of have to be willing to show some unsavory characters and stuff. It gets back to like the Harvey Weinstein movies. Like, I think Weinstein's production company made The Matrix, for instance. Like, are you gonna go back and watch The Matrix now? Probably, if you want to. I doubt there's gonna be too many people that say they're not willing to watch an old movie that's already been made. Moving on. Warner Brothers Games says Lego Star Wars Battles is coming September 24th exclusively to Apple Arcade, which sounds like a very simplistic game. We're still, I guess, waiting for the DC fandom on October 16th. I bet at that point we'll start to hear a lot of Batman stuff announced. Let's see. Gamatsu has more details here. SpongeBob SquarePants: The Cosmic Shake has been announced for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Yeah. And I guess the question really would come down to, is it necessary to go back and play the remaster of the first SpongeBob game? And I would say probably yes, before playing the second one. Gamatsu also has the Jagged Alliance 3 being announced. Check it out if you're interested. Superpower 3 was announced also. Gamatsu has that. MX vs ATV announced for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Check that out if you're interested. There might be the idea of motocross versus ATV games, but feels like you just have to program 2 good engine systems instead of one to simulate motocross and one to simulate ATVs, and so there's a high chance of failure. Gamatsu says Outcast 2: A New Beginning has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. We already talked about these. And Destroy All Humans Reprobed has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Alright, so I'm hoping we will find that I don't have a ton of games left, and so we can get through the remaining games that came out on Steam fairly quickly. Here we have one called Your Show Has Been Cancelled that looks like garbage. $4.79, English, allegedly full audio. Here we have The Repairing Mantis, which looks a little too weird. Repairing? It's not reaping. It's repairing. Yeah, this feels weird. This feels like just a weirdo asset flip game. English and French. Maybe it's just a weirdo French game. That might be it. Here we have a game called Severed Still. Looks like there might be an actual game here. $22.49, English full audio, several other languages. This one's already on the follow list. Here we have Hedge Simulator, which I have no desire to simulate hedge fund trading. English full audio, $1.99. Let's see. Yeah, we have a game on Steam called Space Revenge Prologue, which looks like it's a top-down twin-stick shooter of no interest. Plus, it's a prologue, so we can ignore it. English and Spanish. Free to play. I do see the beginning of the end, so we can burn through all this news. Here we have a game called Escape from Dosi, which looks like nothing. $2.99 English only. I don't know how I went so incredibly long. I did go on like 2 or 3 rants today. Maybe I went on 2 or 3 too many. Here we have a game called World of Stalkers, not to be confused with the Stalker game series, although obviously named that way to cause name confusion. $19.99 Russian only, third-party DRM and EULA. Early access also. This is like one of those rare occasions where I kind of do side with copyright holders. Often I think there's just an insane level of abuse of copyright actions to try and enforce and protect copyrights, but when you're literally seeing a game that is trying to make actual name confusion, there is definitely an argument to like filing a trademark lawsuit. But unfortunately, when you see a game like this, they never really get shut down, whereas like ZeniMax, before it was owned by Microsoft, was often sending out cease and desists for completely unconnected projects.
And that concludes today's
Yeah. And I don't know if we'll see ZeniMax continuing to do that. Here we have a game on Steam called Swing Dunk, which, it might be something. It's like a basketball game, but I'm not sure it looks good enough. So you got these weird looking characters which you'll never really pay any attention to as you're trying to play this Rocket League basketball game. There might be something to this. It's early access, free to play, online PvP. Well, if it's online PvP only, though, I'll take it off the follow list because I'm not going to ever play an online PvP game.
Belong now.
Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called From View, which just looks like it's an asset flip game.
It won't be long now.
Let's see. It says find hidden objects in beautiful rendered dioramas. Nah, I don't think there's really a game there. $3.59, English only. Here we have Klondike Reimagined, which just looks terrible. $3.99, English only. Here we have a game called Game Deck, DEC. Single player cyberpunk isometric RPG, that's a lot of things. It's rated very positively. I'm going to put it on the fall list. I could put it on the wish list, but I think I want to rush today and I want to come back and look at this later. No, actually, this looks good enough to just go to the wish list. $26.99, whole bunch of languages. Here we have Voidwalkers, Astoria's Darkness.
I shall give birth to a new world.
Why did that not destroy? I had to have more health downward first. Voidwalkers Astoria's Darkness doesn't look like anything of interest. Free to play, English, allegedly full audio. We have Clash of Chefs VR, which doesn't look like anything I'd want to play. $15.99. Whole bunch of languages. These cooking games, actually that looks kind of appealing, like simulating cooking pizzas and such, if you really are doing that. But I suspect you're not really doing much there. Like, I do want a good cooking game. I want the graphics to be hyper realistic on the food. But I wouldn't want to do it in VR, and I wouldn't want it to just become a cook serve delicious style game and just a rhythm game where you have to try your best to get things out as fast as possible. Here we have a game on Steam called Legends of Snooker One Shot, which I don't know why you would want to do just the last shot in a snooker game. That seems silly. Almost like a puzzle game that is not interesting enough.
Stop!
79 cents, whole bunch of languages. Here we have a game called Palm Ride, which just is another neon racing game. $2.59, English only. Alright, well, now I can destroy something.
I shall give birth to a new world.
That was a fine bout.
Do that. Do that.
You're in good hands.
Next we have a game on Steam called Fastlane Bowling, which is too rough of a bowling looking game. I would like a bowling game, but this kind of feels like something that you would expect to see in 1990, not 2021. Sometimes I reference a year and I'm totally in the wrong decade. $1.99 English only. See, and if you told me that this originally come out 10-20 years ago, I might cut it a little bit more slack, but it's still, frankly, I just don't think it's good enough. This next game is tagged sexual content, so let's see if it's YouTube family friendly. I think it's good enough. Here we have a game called Fake Hostel, which, as far as I can tell, is probably a simple pipe dreams game that then has lewd images of the girls, and I'm sure there's an 18+ patch and all kinds of bundles for the 18+ patch. They seem like they've gotten back down to the point where you just straight up can have the free patches on Steam storefronts. Nobody seems to complain or be upset with that. The inconsistency that was once there around whether or not the patches could be on the Steam storefront seems to have been resolved. Either that or the person who was causing trouble around that idea and saying no to that idea stopped being in charge. But yeah, overall, this game is $1.69 and claims to support a bunch of languages, and it's bundled, so you know it's garbage. What sucks here, I would say, is that a lot of these, one of these images shows the girls like covered in what I can only assume is poop. So this may be one of the first cases in which there's just a lot of scatological poop related material and images, because there's a lot of toilet play that seems to be taking a role here. In fact, yeah, now that I look at more of these screenshots, a lot of these images have the characters covered in poop. There's a fetish out there for everybody, so there should be, I suppose, at least one game out there that covers a fetish for everybody. Okay.
There is not a soul without sin.
Let us conclude.
Punish the wicked. Spare the innocent.
You wouldn't.
Next we have Fantasy Sliding Puzzle 2, which obviously it's just fairy characters and a simple slide puzzles. $1.79. 52 item bundle here for $25.74. English only. Here we have a game called Zombie Watch, which is already mixed and really doesn't look like anything of interest. $12.59 single player English, Russian, and Chinese. Here we have a game called Paintball X, which maybe I would have said yes to this if it weren't for the fact that the other people you're shooting are little voxel people. That seems inconsistent with the rest of the visuals, and yeah, I don't know if paintball is going to be a luxury that comes back in any major number. It was sort of popular for a brief second there, but with the pandemic and all, I could see it mostly disappearing. Yeah. Here we have a game called Era North Chronicles, which just looks like an RPG game. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything here of interest. $16.99 English only. Here we have a game called The Chaser's Voyage, which looks like a space game of no interest. Side-scrolling in some form or fashion. $19.99 English, allegedly full audio. Here we have a game called Dumb Treasure, which looks like some weird graphics. I don't know if that weird means bad. Darkness Under the Bed. English full audio. Alright, so let's look at the game that costs money. This is one that was on the following list. And I kind of knew I'd seen this imagery before. So I guess what we would do, put this on the fall list also. And if we decide to get one, purchase one, we'll get the other one for free. And check them both out. One more game. We're getting victories, which is nice. Here we have a game that's all Asian characters. It's tagged as an RPG dating sim. I suspect it's just a visual novel dating sim more than anything else. English not supported, Chinese only, $9.99. Here we have Rhythm Knights, which seems to have the knights from the Castle Knights, Castle Crashers, but they're all drawn very differently. Dallin Larson. I don't think this is the person that published or made Castle Crashers, though. If anything, I think they're just drawing Castle Crasher colors onto knights, which it's probably not copyrightable to draw knights in different colors. Yeah, and this is still just a rhythm game, so I have no real interest in it. So I have to say no to that. Let's see. Next we have a game called Bad Bots Battle Arena on Steam, which looks like nothing. Although I will say the robots look a little bit better than your average robots or battle bots. Which I guess that's really what this is trying to be, is something like BattleBots. $2.99 English only. I don't know how you make a video game around the idea of BattleBots though. Because you'd basically have to have just a whole bunch of items and pieces of equipment to add and remove from a BattleBot. Let's see, here we have a game called The Research Age Deluxe, which I feel like I either wishlist The Research Age and for one reason or another said no to it. Maybe I even played this game. I don't think I did. This is English and Italian. Let's see. Has there been another game called The Resource Age? Not from this developer. It feels like something is very similar to something I've already seen. Alright, well I'm gonna just put this on the fall list. It probably doesn't even deserve that much. $4.99. English and Italian again. Here we have The Floor is Blank, which just is a frustration precision platformer, so I have no interest in that. $2.39 English only. Here we have Speedway Challenge 2021, which looks like nothing. $8.99 English and Polish. Don't get a lot of those. don't get a lot of English and Italian either. Here we have Porto Viejo, which it's drawn in a more polished and interesting way, so I think there might be an experience here. This might be kind of a simplistic collection of mini games, certainly too. 539 is not asking a ton. Allegedly full audio in every language. Let's put that on the follow list. I suspect that means there's actually no voice acting at all. Here we have Demon Lord Jill, which at cleavage definitely tells me that this is one of these RPG Maker games where they make the characters scantily clad. And that's the really only selling point. $3.99, English, Japanese, and Chinese, and in this case there is no patch. It says it has sexual language and that's it. Whereas clearly somewhere there is a version of this game that does have adult content in it. You don't put characters in skimpy, scantily clad outfits like that and not go the full distance, most of the time, at least. Yeah, and the video definitely is implying a lot of nudity. Like the first 10 seconds of the video is literally naked anime girls with caution tape over their image, over their body. Let's see, play this and attack here. Let's see, next we have a game called Sit Down Please, which seems to be a single screen horror game, really. Yeah, these screenshots don't imply to me that there's a lot of game here. Yeah.
Stop.
Yeah, the entire game is just that one screen. $1.99 English and Italian. Next we have a game on Steam called Good Night, which looks like a very visually busy bullet hell game. With no game over though, there's an interesting thought. One button bullet hell game, use your agility and quickness to dodge bullets, battle in different mysterious hells against the giant bosses, featuring stunning visual impact and original meta soundtracks. Metal soundtracks, not meta soundtracks. Early access, English and Chinese. I'm going to put this on the follow list, but I bet there's not really a game here. If it's one button control and there is no game over, like, how does that work? Filipino mythology, then why is it supporting Chinese and not Filipino story? I know China is, I think, trying to acquire the Philippines as much as they're trying to acquire everything else, but
Smiles are the best medicine.
and I guess also the Philippines isn't a very big market, so
Another pointless path.
yeah, this really seems too hardcore. Unlimited tries is not really what I would want, even if I'm just gonna die over and over again. But I guess I'll leave it on the follow list. We'll see.
Feel free to call on me again.
Here we have a game called GHD, which just looks like a first-person shooter with some asset flip arenas. $7.19, single player online PvP. English full audio, it says. Let's see. Do this.
Give birth to a new world. There's sand in my eyes.
There we go. Next we have Origami 2 on Steam, which I think we can just go ahead and put that on the wish list, and the only real question would be, is Origami 1 on the wish list? Origami 2, Origami 2, Origami 1 Nightfall, Origami mask set, which is free. I don't know why I don't have that just installed then. Oddly, doesn't seem like it wants to install. I don't know why.
There is not a soul without sin.
You are done for.
Punish the wicked. Spare the innocent. Best of luck to you.
And then do that.
You're in good hands.
Yeah, Origami 1 is on my wish list. And for a second there, I was thinking of a different game. Yeah, and that just really goes to show that I'm still 5 years back on some of these games, if not even older. There's a different game that looks similar to this, but there obviously has been some major improvement as far as how the 3D modeling compared to a more cartoony stylized vision in 2016. And if anything, it might be a little too drastic a change for the same series, and that may cause problems later. Let's keep on playing. Here we have a game on Steam called Stonekeeper's Prologue, which doesn't look like a terrible game. Actually looks pretty interesting. Do I want to play the prologue, or do they have a listing for just Stonekeeper? I think I'll put Stonekeeper on the follow list, and maybe I'll take it off the follow list because it doesn't have an official release date. But yeah, this does look like this might be something I could put my attention towards. Here we have a game called Mandinga, A Tale of Bonzo, which I don't know if this is a names I should recognize or not.
You have summoned the blade of purgation here.
This definitely feels like it's based on the historical moment in Brazil. Yeah, that's why I thought I heard of some of these words. I don't think they're just made up words. $7.99 English, Portuguese, Brazil. Let's put that on the follow list. That might be an interesting historical game. And I'm always looking for interesting historical games, particularly when you're not just spouting the well-known stories that have been told before. Okay. So you hit this one,
I'll see you
and then you hit this one, then you hit that, then in the turn. Here we have a game on Steam called Helper Cat, which just looks like a Sokoban block pusher. Now I'm gonna go through my Steam, my Twitter feeds, but I am not gonna cover any new games. We'll leave those for Wednesday. It says 59 cents English only. Nothing of interest there. Here we have one Hajwala Line, which just looks like it's a racing game of no interest. Seems to be set in maybe the Middle East. $9.99, English and Arabic. Arabic, I guess is the right way to pronounce that. Next we have a game called Toem. This is the weird black and white game where you find a bunch of items and you do these little side quests. I thought this was already on the follow list. $17.99. Whole bunch of languages. This game has a photography element to it also. But the black and whiteness of it is the weird part that I think is probably a mistake. Be funny if they remastered it and it came out just colorized. Here we have a game called Plunder Panic, which seems to be just a Smash Brothers type player versus player game. Early access, $9.99, English only. RetroArch, I forgot to install that. And then Slender Threads Prologue as a point-and-click adventure. Just go over the Slender Threads itself and put that on the follow list. And then Flynn, Son of Crimson. Looks like it might be a actually polished Metroidvania type platforming game that actually has enough enemies and enough visual polish on the heads-up display that I actually think there's a game there. And I'm saying actually a lot there because so often we see these 3D platformers and there's just no enemies on screen. There's no gameplay mechanics seemingly. There's no collectibles seemingly. The visuals usually are lacking. This is $17.99, a whole bunch of languages. But yeah, we can definitely put that on the follow list. Let's go ahead and exit out of here now. And yeah, we will see about the new tweets. Oh, there was this whole arena run thing that too that I'll just have to play that off screen if I play it at all. There's just no desire in me to drag out this recording, which they're telling me now has been 6 hours. My recording software. I just have a hard time believing that's been true. Unless I just rambled and blacked out and forgot how much I rambled or how long I rambled, which maybe I did. What'll tell me about this more than anything is when I start to go through my Twitter feed here, I'll be able to see I'll be able to see the last tweet I covered. Yeah, we're still looking for like one victory here. We've got an arena run. Koei Tecmo says photo mode is coming to Fatal Frame Maiden in Blackwater, and it gives you the opportunity to share your experiences on Mount Hikami, which yeah, that's believable. Yeah, it would totally be believable that we've gone 3, maybe even 4 hours, but 6? That's crazy. If I really have gone 6 hours, what this is telling me really is that that I've finally gotten over whatever like tiredness I had and shot in the other direction. But I don't believe it because I'm looking at things from like 3 hours ago. And inherently this is a problem with a clock that can be wrong. If it's drastically wrong enough, it can just gaslight you into believing all sorts of nonsense. Yeah, we've been going less than 6 hours for sure. I can say that much. Probably closer to 3. Let's see. Ideally, we would start to have less news in general as things start to wind down. Yeah, and that does kind of seem like that might be the case as I'm going through my Twitter feeds. Okay, so GameDeveloper.com has My Games has acquired the hyper-casual studio Mambo Games for over $2 million. Here's a game on Steam called Zombies Beyond Me, which I think we can just say no to. Video Games Chronicle says Quantic Dream's Star Wars game is reportedly more action-focused than its previous titles. It's claimed the game could also feature open world and multiplayer elements. You kind of hope for open world at the very least, if not multiplayer, and definitely needs to be way more action-focused than previous Quantic Dreams games, which were barely games and more interactive movies. And then we have a game on Steam here called Grotonia, which doesn't look like a particularly interesting game, and the visuals look pretty bad for what you're doing, not touching the sides. And then the last bit of news, Activision Blizzard's CEO has been subpoenaed as part of the new SEC investigation. Of course, that was always going to happen, so the timing is news, but it's no big surprise. The government agency is looking into the handling of sexual misconduct and workplace discrimination allegations. I suspect there is a decent number of CEOs of big companies that get subpoenaed and it just never gets mentioned. Okay, with that, fingers crossed, I'm going to now end the stream and everything works and the recording works and whatever timing issue has been going on that both crashed my timer and says that I've been recording for 5 hours and 55 minutes are simply visual issues. That's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.